Open your ears and lube up your butthole. It's time for the What Do We Call It podcast. Now, here's your host. It's Jmann. Welcome to the What Do We Call It podcast. I'm Jmann.
And I'm number one fan, Tim.
I would like to play for you a video.
I like videos.
A video whose soundtrack sounds like mass hysteria. Sounds like people losing their shit.
Okay.
As with everything these days, there is no, can they do that? Should they do that? It's always, oh my fucking God, you can't do that. Ah! And then they all go home and they take turns washing the sand out of each other's vaginas. Hadouken! So this is a video of a woman in Austin, Texas being arrested. He's pat searching her in the bra area.
Underneath. He didn't cup it. He just searched underneath.
Do you see how fast you fucking figured that out? Let's watch it again. Listen to the anger in everyone's voice as this woman is pat searched. Oh my God.
Don't you fucking touch her! Don't you fucking touch her!
So, I would just like to point out that this widely shared video clip is of an Austin, Texas police officer, and he stops and frisks a woman. Many describe the incident as groping and sexual assault, but Austin police defended the officer, saying he followed standard procedure. Most police are trained this way. It's how I was trained in college. It's a universal standard. When you have to pat search someone of the opposite sex, you have to check their bra line for any hidden weapons or contraband.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, if there's a female officer available and they can come do that for you, you would ask for it. If they're available or if it's feasible. These days, not always either of those.
There's not a lot of female police officers nowadays, is there?
There's really not. And so as he's pat searching this woman's bra area, he uses his thumb and the back of his hand. Starts in the middle of her bra, sweeps under the breast into the armpit.
Yep, he never cupped it or anything.
But everybody freaked out like he groped her breast. Then, once the guy in the video is done saying, don't you fucking touch her, don't you fucking touch her, she can be heard saying, I demand a female officer. And they allegedly told her one is not available. Then he used his other hand to start in the middle of the bra.
Yep.
And check the other side.
Yeah, it wasn't even a second of checking.
Back of the hand. And this is the most important part. Because there was no female officer available, he handcuffed her. He put her up in front of the vehicle so the dashboard camera could capture all of it. And he had a second officer standing next to him, present to observe the technique in case any sort of shenanigans ensued or any allegations were made.
'Cause anytime a police car's strobes are on, that dash cam is recording.
Typically, yes.
You can turn it off. I know that.
I don't think it's as easy to do that these days.
Oh, it's easy. It's very easy. The mechanic showed me how to do it.
Did he? So I went to the one place where you know that you can totally get unbiased, calm, and diplomatic responses. Twitter.
Yeah, sure.
And lo and behold, there are many people who are just losing their mind, most of them being women, saying that this was a sexual assault. And I tweeted at a few of them that this is how officers are trained. Again, it's how I was trained in college. It's how I was trained at the jail. We were not allowed to do cross-gender searches, but at the facility I worked at, there were always one of every gender on in the building at all times. So we could avoid that.
Mm-hmm.
And once upon a time ago, some rookie came in, pat searched two females, quite liberally, they told me. That's a quote. And I'm like, excuse me? She's like, yeah, he pat searched us. I'm like, really? Because that's not how we do things around here. So you have two options. If you would like to speak to an administrator, I can let you. Or if you would like me to speak to them for you, I will go do so immediately. And I did. And he talked to them. And they repeated themselves. And the boss checked the camera. Because the camera was right next to the workstation where we sit. Where the pat searches took place.
Mm-hmm.
And he called the guy to ask him what happened. The guy said he didn't do it. Boss let him know that he was fired immediately for lying. because he had him on camera doing it.
See, if he had just said, yes, I did pat search him, he probably would have kept his job.
Oh, most likely, yes. So that's just, where I worked. But this is how officers are trained. I texted a few cops I know. I'm like, how would you do a pat search on a female if you were in the field? They're like, well, like you were always trained. Thumb in the middle of the bra line, back of the hand. Always the back of the hand, never the cup. You don't want to do that.
Yeah. Because that actually could be construed as groping. So
right, or sometimes if you have one hand behind someone's back, you can ask them, especially in a jail when they come in for intake, you ask the females, grab the front of your bra, pull it forward, and shake it out in case they got anything, right?
That I didn't know. And
yes.
Despite all the documentaries I watched about prisons and stuff like that, I've never actually seen that.
Well, it's a universal standard because it allows for a basic search before arrest. So before someone's placed in a squad, you're checking for weapons or drugs and paraphernalia or other items that are considered contraband by jails. And you do that before they get to the jail so they're not introducing these things possibly into a facility setting. It's for everyone's safety.
Yeah.
Somebody might have razor blades or needles in their bra or drugs.
No, it makes sense, yeah.
I once had an inmate tell me that he went through 3 facilities and didn't shit for 5 days and was in miserable pain while they waited for him to crap out the dope that they were certain he had up his butt.
Did he have dope?
Yes. And he did not poop.
He held it in for 5 days.
Yes.
Can't that kill you?
I probably.
Something to be Googled.
Yeah. He's like super proud. He's like, oh, dude, I was a pro at that shit. I had like 84 months hanging over my head. I wasn't shitting for anything. And they kept me in a single cell by myself. And they made me have an officer present when I go to the bathroom.
I had a buddy tell me that sometimes he has to poop. And it's like, but when we're on the road, we don't have an opportunity to stop. So he says he just holds it. And eventually it goes away.
Kind of.
And I asked him, like, what? So what? When do you have to shit, like, later the day? And he's like, no, it just goes away. And it's probably sometimes the next day I have to shit. I told him, I said, dude, that can't be good for you.
Okay, let me tell you this. I'm so busy at work, back when we used to be in the building, that I would hold my shit as long as I possibly can, because I'm always under the gun to get as much accomplished as I can, because my workflow never stops.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to what I used to do when I worked in a jail, I do 10 to 50 times the work.
I can see it being more work doing what you do now than what you used to, yeah.
Phone calls, emails, going to team meetings, benefit packets, all this shit. I have to do it, then I have to bill for it. At the jail, I had to go there, I had to do my rounds.
You babysat.
I babysat, and then I typed reports when shit went down. I dealt with the meds, I dealt with some other stuff, I did pat searches, I did UAs, but none of it ever sat there waiting for me to do it. Like if I had somebody that had to take a piss in a cup for me for drugs and my shift ended, it rolled over the next shift. It didn't oh, sorry, you're going to have to hold your piss till he comes back tomorrow or from his 3 days off. Because that's what it's like being a social worker by comparison. So back to the point here, it's not a sexual assault as badly as you want it to be because everybody hates cops now. He didn't grope her breast. If a cop grabs your tit and squeezes and feels around a bit, that'd
be groping. Yeah.
That would be improper conduct and a sexual assault. But to say, oh, he assaulted her. No, he handcuffed her and she deserved to be arrested because basically what this had to do with was this woman who was driving behind a line of officers that were trying to steer a protest.
Mm-hmm.
And she got very uncivil. Honking and fucking almost nudging them. She gets pulled out. They slap the cuffs on. They have to search her. You have to do it. And to say, I demand a female officer. Well, here's the thing.
In the United States, female officers make up roughly 12% of the total of full-time officers employed.
I asked someone I know that works for St. Paul PD and somebody I know that works for Minneapolis PD. I wanted to use the 2 biggest cities because I felt that was a good standard. If I knew anybody in Duluth, I'd ask them, but I don't. So, St. Paul, I asked, how many female officers are on the force? And was told probably less than 30% are female.
That's not very many.
No. Minneapolis, I asked somebody who's married to a cop and was told maybe 25% of Minneapolis cops are female. Maybe. These are departments with hundreds of officers.
Yeah.
And then I went and I looked up if you can get the gender breakdown for peace officers in Minnesota. And here's what I found. In 2019, there were a total of 10,836 full-time officers. I didn't count the part-time numbers. 9,565 are male. 1,271 are female. Do you know what that percentage breaks down to?
Just above 10%.
88% of cops in Minnesota that were full-time in 2019 were male. 88%. So when he says there's no female officers around, you have this standard for when that situation happens. And some people are like, well, maybe if you'd hire more females. Just like when people are like, well, if you'd hire more minorities. There's not this grand fucking conspiracy to not hire women or people of color in a number of industries. They just don't apply for the jobs.
The industry I'm in, both private and public sector, there's not a lot of minorities that apply for that position.
How many females?
That do it full time?
Yeah.
0.
How many of the mechanics in the shop where you work are female?
Actual mechanics?
Yes.
0. There's a girl that works in the mechanic shop in the fleet department, but she's records, she's parts, she helps maintain the parts and orders parts and everything that the mechanics actually need.
So where are the most females in your department located? Behind a desk?
Behind a desk in the front office, yeah. So, yeah, not many. It goes the same for minorities. One of my coworkers is part white, part black.
Mm-hmm. Is he the only black dude there?
There was a guy that was an Indian.
With a feather or a dot?
Dot in the front office, but I think he retired. I haven't seen him in a while. He's probably could be working from home, too.
Yeah, I don't see very many female officers around where we live. I would say that 25% or less would be most common number or ratio in most suburban departments. Now, if you get out in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, like in Wyoming or Montana or parts of West Virginia,
it could be
very few.
It could be less than that, yeah.
So again, that is why these standards are developed. So that male officers, when they're in the field and they have to deal with female perps, you have to do what you have to do. You can't just say, well, it's insensitive and times are changing and you can't just cop a feel on women. They're not copping a feel. I'm sorry if you think your opinion is fact. I'm sorry if you see other people aping the same dipshittery on Twitter. That doesn't make it a universal standard that needs to change. It's what has been set forward and done for decades.
A very long time. Because I can imagine back in the 40s and 50s, a cop pulls somebody over. It was by today's standards, it's probably like that 0.001% of police officers that would actually take a joyful grope of a female suspect.
One of the most infamous cop videos I've ever seen is a white cop, like an old white cop, pat searching a black guy. Mm-hmm. And he's patting him in the groin area, and he gets all the way over by his pocket on the side. He's like, what's that? As he's trying to manipulate it with his fingers to figure out what it is, and he goes, my penis. So it's like this dude was packing plenty of meat, and the cop was like, oh, my God.
I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was like a flashlight.
Now, if you're pat searching a female and you have to get near her groin area, you would grab around her thighs and pat, but you would never, like, pat her pussy. You just wouldn't, because anything like that's going to get found at the jail. Well, you might pat around it. You don't grab a handful of junk. You just don't. That's the only other region of the body that would be a fair play for this argument.
Female patter of, like, play with the twigs and berries for a second. I would imagine it would be all the thighs and down. Not like, oh, well, what's in your crack?
I like how you put one finger up higher than the rest. Like you're checking their oil. Jesus. When I had to pat search dudes in the jail, like we're getting around the groin area, we'd pat, and then like you basically have the back of your hand would bump their groin, would bump their sack. Like I would pat here. So, the mons pubis area, or the pubic region, never grabbing right over your dick. Yeah. If we thought somebody was hiding something, we would haul them to another facility for a higher custody level. Or if we thought it was just something we could figure out, there'd have to be 2 or 3 people in a room. We'd have to strip them down to their boxers and have them shake out. And one time we found a dude with drugs in a tiny little bag tied tight with a string tied around his junk. Like between his dick and his balls, he had pills. He was drug dealing. But never did we
like in the movie
grab boobies or grab a dick or grab a pussy. Nobody ever got accused of that shit.
It's like even in the show Orange is the New Black when they showed him frisking, the one pervy officer, they call him Porn Stash. The officers when they would do searches on the inmates and stuff, it was almost the exact same technique with the palm,
back of the hand.
Almost the exact same technique. But I thought it was funny because when they were going into the facility being intaken, they would make the girls strip down with a female officer, squat and cough.
Oh yeah, they make you do that.
And they asked, she's like, "Why do you do that?" It says, "Because if you cough, you can't keep stuff inside."
Yeah. So now my question is for all those people that think that this is just an easy means for male cops to grope females when they arrest them. What do you suggest instead? That we just don't pat search them, and then possibly drugs and contraband make it into police cars and jails? Well, they're going to say, yeah, who gives a shit about the cops, right? Or they're going to say, well, you could hire more female officers. We already went over that. They don't want the job. You can't fucking force them. You can do a female-only hiring initiative or say we need to diversify the workforce by hiring more females, but if they don't want the job, boo fucking who? I have no problem with that. And maybe someone's going to say, yeah, because you're a guy. No, because I was trained that way. And yes, pat searching a female does make me uncomfortable. I had to do it in college with my classmates. Maybe out on the street I would feel less silly about it because I didn't know the person.
Could be, yeah.
But it's what you need to do. You need to check for that stuff. You can't tell me that if somebody has a handcuff key in their bra and can work their hands underneath their fucking feet in front of them while they're cuffed, it can be done. You have to be pretty skinny. I used to be able to do it in my 20s. I used to purposely handcuff myself when I was in cop school and then find ways of wiggling my hands down and getting my feet stepping through and getting my hands in front of me. Now, if you don't just have a handcuff key, but you also have a razor blade or something, those doors don't open from the inside. So a cop has to let you out when you get to the sally port in a jail. So you pull out your little razor blade and cut somebody. It's for officer safety. Quit assuming that every time the police show up, they want to kill you if you're black or grope you if you're female. Get the fuck over yourself. I know that's not going to win anybody over with that vernacular, but honestly, I want you to think about how this has not been a major problem. And I could sit here right now and probably Google statistics of how many cops are accused of groping somebody. But I don't want to get into that, not because it could be detrimental to my argument, but I'm looking at this one incident, how it was done by the book.
Accusations versus how many were found to, they were actually groping when they were supposed to. Like that rookie that worked at the jail where you worked, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's one out of how many officers that worked there? 100?
30-some.
Okay.
1 out of 30.
1 out of 30, plus whatever possibility other people would work there in the future. He's probably one of the damn few that would actually take the opportunity to do something pervy like that.
I don't think he honestly did it to be opportunistic. He just forgot, because at higher security facilities, if you got to do it, you got to do it.
Well, then my question
males
would
will
be,
pat
did
females,
he come?
females will pat males.
Did he come from a higher security facility?
He was training to be a cop. He was in college.
Okay.
So he was applying what he learned in cop school. It went against our training, but here's the thing. There's so many cameras now that for you to relax the standard for something that you would deem more socially acceptable, weighed against officer safety and facility security because they're going to jail. You can't tell me that that's necessary with all the cameras that are around now. It's going to be observed. So stick with the standard that has been established because it's universally acceptable to people that are being objective. Not this fucking crybaby modern cancel culture lunacy.
If I ever get pulled over and they need to do a pat search, can I request a female officer?
If you tell them you identify as a female.
I'd be willing to do it.
And then you're going to have to live that lie for a while.
Not that long. Well, I was identified female, but then after I got groped by a female, I was like, nah, I'd rather be a guy.
That's perfect. That's not at all going to feed into anybody's ridiculous argument about, holy shit, we need more
You're
males.
the one that turned it that route. I just
Only on
wanted to be
males.
funny.
You could do that in the 90s, especially if you were Al Bundy. But if you do it now, be prepared to not only be accosted verbally, you'll be canceled from everything. And then eventually,
Good. I don't want to live in the limelight.
the pendulum's going to swing so far to crazy that they're going to start holding us down and ass-fucking us for having these out-of-date, humorous ideals. You won't be able to make any joke, or they're going to take you somewhere and, just like a furrier would, jam something up your ass and 50,000 volts up the butt.
You just took all the fun out of the show.
Yeah, you're welcome. Interact with the show on Twitter at What Do We Call It? That is at What Do We Call It? You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/What Do We Call It podcast show. For the What Do We Call It podcast, I'm Jmann.
And I'm number one fan, Tim.
And that's the end.
Don't fucking touch her like that! Don't you fucking touch her like that! Get your fucking hands off her! Get a female officer in here now! She's fucking getting manhandled!